Some betrayals don't come with knives or shouting matches. They arrive wrapped in sweetness, disguised as family love, until the mask slips and you realize you are nothing more than a stepping stone. That's how it felt the night my younger sister smiled at me over the pool, my work laptop dripping in her hands. To everyone else, it looked like an accident. To me, it was a declaration of war. What began as one ruined machine turned into a lesson in boundaries, silence, and the cold precision of reclaiming your own life. I had always been the reliable one, the daughter who paid her own bills, never asked for favors, and built her career from the ground up. My younger sister Vanessa was different. At 26, she still lived with our parents, floated from one scheme to another, and somehow always had the latest designer bag on her arm. Family gatherings had become predictable theater, Mom defending her, Dad staying quiet, relatives whispering about how creative Vanessa was while ignoring the trail of wreckage she left behind. That evening, during a family party, she cornered me near the dessert table. Her voice was syrupy as she leaned close. "Nat, I just need $29,000 for this amazing new business idea. It's going to be huge." I laughed, assuming it was a joke. When I realized she was serious, my no came out firm and final. She didn't argue. She only smiled, the kind of smile that made my stomach twist. An hour later, that smile appeared again as she stood by the pool holding my $3,500 work laptop. "Oops," she smirked. I accidentally dropped it. The sound of the splash hollowed out the world around me. Conversations blurred into background noise as I stared at the ripples swallowing the silver machine that carried months of client work, custom software, and contracts. I pulled the dripping laptop from the water like a dying animal, my hand shaking. Mom appeared, wine glass in hand, her tone sharp with impatience. "Nat, it was obviously an accident. Don't make a scene." Vanessa tilted her head, pretending innocence, and whispered, "If you'd just helped me with the 29 grand, this wouldn't have been necessary." My anger wasn't fiery. It was cold, heavy, settling into my chest like ice. I wrapped the laptop in a towel, told her to enjoy the party, and walked away. The rest of the night blurred. I smiled when spoken to, avoided her orbit, and stayed silent while every nerve in my body screamed. Silence, I realized, unsettled her more than any explosion would. She kept glancing my way, waiting for the outburst she could use to paint herself as the victim. I didn't give her that satisfaction. At home later, I set the ruined laptop on my counter under the dim light. Rage pressed against my ribs, but instead of venting, I opened my backup computer. One by one, I began changing every password: Netflix, Amazon Prime, Spotify, Apple Music, even the old Apple ID she had been piggybacking on for years. Each click felt like pulling weeds from a garden I had neglected for too long. I secured my bank accounts, locked the joint card my parents had given me years ago, and shifted savings into a private account. By the time the clock blinked 1:47 a.m., I had rebuilt walls she would never breach again. The next morning at 6:15 a.m., my phone buzzed with Vanessa's name. I let it ring. Then came the texts. "Why can't I log in to Netflix? Amazon's not working either. Did you change the passwords?" I sipped my coffee before replying. "Yeah. You don't pay for them, so you don't get to use them." Her silence was immediate. Minutes later, Mom called, furious. "Nat, what is this? Vanessa says you've locked her out of everything. That's petty. I kept my voice steady. That's called boundaries. Mom's response was the same script I'd heard for years. She made a mistake. She's your sister. You're supposed to help her, not punish her. I let the silence stretch until she huffed and hung up. By noon, the family group chat buzzed like a grenade. Mom wrote, "Family should stick together. Don't let something small tear us apart." Small. To her, drowning my laptop and demanding $29,000 was small. Dad called later, his tone calm as if we were discussing the weather. "Your mother's worried. You two need to make peace. She's young. Nat. She'll grow out of it." I nearly laughed. "Dad, she destroyed my work. She's been using me for years." He sighed. "She's your sister. Let it go." But I wasn't letting it go. Not this time. For the first time in years, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. Instead, I opened a notebook and began writing dates, incidents, amounts, screenshots, receipts. If my family wanted me to be the villain, fine. But when the curtain finally fell, they would see exactly who had been pulling the strings. The following days became a quiet storm. On the surface, I went about my routines, client meetings, grocery runs, answering emails. But each night, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and my notebook, piecing together years of Vanessa's manipulations. It wasn't just the drowned laptop or the stolen streaming accounts. There had been the credit card she'd borrowed during college that came back with $1,200 in mysterious charges. The dress she borrowed from my closet, returned with a wine stain tucked beneath the hem. The time she used my professional headshot on her resume to land a meeting with a client she wasn't qualified to handle. Each memory was another thread woven into a tapestry I'd been too tired to face until now. By the third night, my binder had grown thick, each page labeled and arranged chronologically. It wasn't a list of grudges, it was evidence, a map of behavior my parents had ignored for years. I wasn't collecting these incidents to scream them back at family dinners. I was building something far stronger, a narrative they couldn't dismiss with the usual excuses. 3 days later, Vanessa cracked. At brunch with acquaintances, I overheard someone gossiping about her latest venture. She had been telling people that I was her silent partner, her marketing mentor, the name she could wave like a banner to attract investors. I felt the air leave my lungs. She hadn't just stolen from me. She was actively impersonating me. That evening, I scoured her online presence. Buried in her Instagram feed was a blurry photo of her workspace, my old company logo glowing faintly on the screen. On her abandoned blog, there were references to guidance from my big sis, sloppy, reckless. Then a client of mine, someone I trusted, sent me a PDF she had circulated a full pitch deck. There it was, in bold under advisors Natalia S., marketing consultant. My own LinkedIn profile linked beneath. If this were chess, Vanessa had just moved her queen directly into my line of fire. But instead of striking immediately, I reminded myself that timing was everything. Anger made people sloppy. Patience made them powerful. I waited. The waiting paid off when Mr. Carson, an old family friend, called unexpectedly. His investment firm had been approached by Vanessa. Something in her pitch had unsettled him, and when he saw my name, he decided to verify. He forwarded her materials straight to my inbox. That night, as I added his email to my binder, I realized I now had everything proof of property damage. evidence of fraud, misuse of my professional identity, financial motive, and even her own words bragging to friends about teaching Nat a lesson. Step 1 was precision. I sent the binder scanned, bookmarked, impossible to misinterpret to my lawyer friend Ethan. Within 24 hours, he had drafted a cease and desist letter that made even me wince. We sent it to Vanessa, her so-called business partner, and because I wanted no room for denial, copied my parents. I didn't text, didn't call. I let the silence do its work. The fallout was immediate. My phone lit up with messages from Vanessa, cycling through outrage, guilt, and threats. You're ruining everything. You're supposed to want me to succeed. When I make it big, you'll regret this. I ignored them all. Ethan had told me the surest way to rattle her was to give her nothing to push against. Step 2 was exposure. I forwarded the same binder to every investor she had approached. My note was short and professional. I have no involvement with this venture and do not endorse it. By the end of the week, her partner had dropped her. Friends who once hyped her on social media quietly stopped tagging her. Even the aunts who had called me cold went silent. Step 3 was the family reveal. I condensed the binder, printed it, and mailed it to my parents with a single sticky note. Thought you should see the whole story. No response needed. For 2 days, nothing. On the third evening, my aunt called, her voice hushed with excitement. She'd been at my parents' house when Vanessa walked in to find Dad waiting with the binder spread across the coffee table. He went through it line by line, asking for explanations she couldn't provide. She tried the usual lines. It was an accident. I didn't mean it. Nat's twisting things, but this time, neither of them bit. According to my aunt, Dad's final words were calm, but sharp as glass. Pack your things and go. For the first time, the script had cracked. The savior, the silence, the excuses, none of it came. Mom didn't rush to defend her. She just sat there, lips pressed into a thin line, watching her daughter's stories collapse. When Vanessa left their house that night with 2 suitcases and no plan, I didn't cheer. I simply poured another cup of coffee and underlined 3 words in my notebook: control the narrative. For years, she had thrived on chaos, pulling me into arguments, turning me into the villain. This time, I hadn't raised my voice once. All I'd done was shine a light, and the truth had spoken louder than I ever could. Silence settled over the family like a heavy fog. For 4 full days, I didn't receive a single call, not even one of Mom's passive-aggressive texts about sticking together. When my phone finally buzzed, it was my aunt, whispering as though we were discussing classified secrets. Things at your parents' house are tense, she said. Vanessa had been confronted again. Dad with the binder open on the coffee table, every page laid bare. She tried the same script. It was an accident. I didn't mean it. Nat twisted everything, but this time Mom didn't rush in to save her. She simply sat in silence, and silence was louder than any defense. By the next morning, Vanessa was gone. Word spread quickly through the family network. Cousins, who had once called me cold, now had nothing to say. The group chat went dead. Aunts and uncles who had chimed in about money-changing people suddenly grew very quiet. It struck me as almost funny when I was painted as the villain. Everyone had an opinion, but when the truth came out, silence reigned. Her so-called friends weren't any better. Half stopped answering her calls after the cease and desist letter circulated. The others quietly unfollowed her on social media. One mutual acquaintance mentioned she'd heard Vanessa's business had collapsed entirely. No partner, no investors, no funding. She was couch surfing now, drifting between friends she used to brag about outgrowing. Weeks passed. I poured myself into work, and the results spoke louder than anything Vanessa could post on Instagram. A lucrative new contract landed in my inbox, the retainer alone worth more than the $29,000 she had tried to con from me. I didn't brag. I simply upgraded my workspace, sunlight spilling across a sleek new laptop, and posted a single photo online. No captions, no boasts, just quiet proof of progress. Vanessa saw it. I could feel her silence through the absence of reaction. One afternoon, leaving a coffee shop, I spotted her across the street. Her hair was unwashed, makeup smudged, shoulders slumped under the weight of something heavier than bags. She wasn't scrolling her phone like usual, just staring at the pavement. When her eyes met mine, there was no smirk, no sarcasm, no challenge, just exhaustion. She looked away first. I kept walking. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. Justice had already been served, and she had done it to herself. 6 months after she left our parents' house, the family landscape had shifted. Mom's texts came only on holidays, short, polite, stripped of guilt trips. Dad's messages were even briefer. Hope you're well. The endless lectures about helping family had stopped, replaced by a fragile truce. In my quieter moments, I wondered if they realized the truth protecting Vanessa hadn't been love. It had only been enabling. But though Vanessa was gone, the echoes remained. I still kept the binder, not because I needed to use it again, but as a reminder. Boundaries aren't built in one dramatic confrontation. They're forged in 100 small choices to stop letting people treat you like you owe them everything. Every password I'd changed, every silence I'd held, every page I'd documented it had all built the walls I now lived behind. Walls strong enough to protect me from manipulation disguised as family loyalty. Work flourished. The new laptop had already paid for itself twice over. Clients appreciated my reliability, the one thing that had always defined me, but had nearly been drowned in that pool alongside my old machine. I began to see the contrast. Clearly, reliability isn't weakness, and silence isn't surrender. Sometimes, silence is the sharpest weapon you can wield. Vanessa's name rarely came up anymore. Family gatherings happened without her, and when someone mentioned her absence, the subject shifted quickly. It was as if acknowledging her choices meant admitting their own blindness, and no one wanted that. Occasionally, I'd hear rumors that she was still drifting, that she had burned through friendships, that she'd moved out of state. None of it mattered. For the first time in years, her chaos no longer dictated my life. In quiet moments, sipping coffee at my desk, I sometimes thought of that night at the pool. The hollow splash, the smirk on her lips, the silence of my parents as if my work meant nothing. But instead of anger, I felt clarity. That single act, as destructive as it was, had forced me to see what I had been avoiding. Boundaries aren't optional. They're survival. I had spent years defending myself, explaining, pleading with people who never wanted to hear my side. And when I finally stopped, when I chose silence and strategy over shouting, the entire script collapsed. Vanessa lost everything she had tried to steal. I gained something she never valued: peace. In the months that followed, life took on a new rhythm. Without the constant pull of family drama, I felt lighter, sharper, more focused than ever before. Each morning, I brewed coffee, opened my new laptop, and logged into accounts secured by layers of protection only I controlled. Work flowed like never before. Clients praised my consistency, my ability to deliver on time without excuses. For years, I had carried the weight of being the dependable one, the sibling who never asked for anything. What I hadn't realized was how much energy I had wasted defending that role against the very people who should have valued it most. Now, freed from that endless battle, reliability became my strength instead of my burden. Vanessa's absence changed the family dynamic in subtle but undeniable ways. Without her constant chaos, dinners at my parents' house became quieter. Mom no longer filled the air with excuses for Vanessa's behavior. Dad seemed relieved to talk about something other than smoothing over another disaster. The group chat, once a stage for arguments and guilt trips, turned into a place where people mostly shared photos of meals or updates about pets. It wasn't harmony exactly, but it was no longer a battlefield either. And yet, I could feel the undercurrent of unspoken tension. Mom's holiday texts were polite but stripped of warmth. "Merry Christmas. Hope you're well. Happy birthday. Thinking of you." She never mentioned Vanessa, but her silence carried its own weight. Dad's notes were briefer still. "Take care. Good luck with work." I knew what they weren't saying. They had seen the binder, had read every page, had chosen silence rather than apology. But silence was progress. Silence meant acknowledgement, even if pride kept the words locked away. One evening, as I organized files in my office, I glanced at the binder resting on the top shelf of my bookcase. Thick, heavy, its spine bent from use. I hadn't opened it in weeks, but just knowing it was there gave me a strange comfort. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was a reminder of what it had taken to finally stand up, of the cold precision that boundaries sometimes require. Each page was proof that I hadn't imagined the years of manipulation. Proof that my voice, even when silent, had power. Friends often asked how I stayed so calm through everything. The truth was, calmness hadn't been my nature, it had been my choice. In the past, I would have screamed, argued, begged my parents to see reason. But Vanessa had thrived on that chaos. Every explosion I gave her was fuel for her narrative. The moment I stopped playing the part she'd written for me, she had no story left. That was the lesson silence had taught me sometimes. The most devastating blow is refusing to perform the role someone else casts for you. I occasionally wondered what became of her. Rumors drifted through cousins and acquaintances that she had tried another business idea and failed, that she had left the state, that she was still hopping from one couch to another. None of it mattered. She was no longer my responsibility. I no longer had to clean up the mess or explain her actions to skeptical friends or wary clients. For the first time, her choices belonged solely to her. One crisp morning, 6 months after she had left my parents' house, I walked past the same pool where it all began. The water shimmered in the sunlight, clear and calm. No trace of the night my livelihood had sunk beneath its surface. I stood for a moment, remembering the hollow splash, the smirk on her lips, the sharp dismissal in my mother's voice. And then I let the memory drift away like ripples fading across the water. The pool was just a pool again. The past was no longer mine to carry. In the end, I hadn't set out to break my family apart. I had only wanted to protect myself. But sometimes protecting yourself changes the whole system around you. My parents had been forced to see the truth they had spent years ignoring, that shielding Vanessa from consequences wasn't love. It was enabling. And enabling her had cost everyone more than they had realized. As for me, I learned the power of quiet decisions. Boundaries aren't loud. They don't always come with speeches or declarations. They come in the form of a password changed at midnight, a joint account closed, a silence held when accusations fly. They come in the decision to walk past chaos without engaging. And over time, those choices build walls stronger than any dramatic confrontation ever could. I don't know if Vanessa thinks about what she lost. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. But I've learned it isn't my job to wonder. My job is to keep building a life rooted in strength, clarity, and peace. In the end, the most powerful revenge wasn't destroying her. It was walking away and letting her destroy herself. If you found meaning in this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful real-life inspired stories. And let me know in the comments, have you ever had to draw a boundary that changed everything?